What happens when the man who built a logistics empire from scratch ends up hauling boxes on the night shift to find out where things went wrong? Eli Emerson had 11 distribution centers across the Midwest. 15 years ago, it was just him and a rented van delivering packages out of his garage. Now, with hundreds of employees and thousands of deliveries a day, he was the CEO of a company he barely recognized anymore. 3 weeks ago, he got an anonymous complaint about the overnight shift at one of his warehouses in Ohio. The email wasn't dramatic, just a few lines about workers being overworked and ignored, and that safety rules were just for show. Eli didn't forward it to HR. He didn't send it to the district manager either. He booked a cheap motel 15 minutes from the warehouse just outside of Dayton. He shaved his neatly trimmed beard, dyed his hair dark brown, and put in contact lenses. Eli didn't show up in a suit. He wore worn jeans, a faded hoodie, and steel-toe boots. His name tag read, Eric. The Dayton warehouse had never met him in person, none of the overnight team had. It was a corporate chain, and only a couple of the 11 locations had ever hosted him for walkthroughs during the day. Overnight staff? They'd only ever seen his photo in the onboarding handbook, if they even read it. He walked in at 10:50 p.m., 10 minutes early for orientation. A young woman at the front desk looked up. "You the new guy? Eric?" she asked. "Yeah. First night." She handed him a laminated badge and pointed down the hallway. "Break room straight ahead. Night manager will grab you in a sec." The warehouse smelled like cardboard and cold concrete. In the break room, a few workers were eating vending machine snacks and sipping coffee. Nobody paid much attention to him except for a lanky guy in his 20s who gave him a quick nod. "First night?" the guy asked. "Yeah. I'm Mason. Stick close, place is a maze." At 11 sharp, a heavy-set man in his 50s walked in, clipboard in hand, voice loud. "I'm Greg. Night shift manager. We got a light crew tonight, 6 people called off." Again. He rolled his eyes. "So listen up. Safety goggles at all times. Don't climb shelves. Don't lift more than 50 pounds alone." "Got it?" Everyone nodded. Eli did too. Greg scanned the clipboard. "Eric, you're with Daryl. Package sorting, Zone C." A tall man in his 60s with a deep tan and slick gray ponytail grunted from the back of the room. "Let's go, rookie." Eli followed Daryl through the warehouse. Conveyors hummed. Forklifts beeped. The place wasn't a disaster, but it was behind. He could tell from the number of unopened pallets stacked by the walls. Daryl didn't talk much. He just started tossing boxes onto carts. Quick, efficient, but reckless. Several times he bent with a twist, lifted sideways, or tossed heavy boxes too far. "Shouldn't we use the lift for these?" Eli asked, eyeing a box labeled 82 pounds. Daryl snorted. "You want to wait 20 minutes for a lift? Be my guest." He picked it up solo and dropped it onto a cart with a loud slam. Eli flinched. "Back when this place ran right," Daryl muttered. "We didn't need all this safety lecture crap. We got things done." Eli didn't respond. He just followed, sorting and lifting, watching as Daryl ignored almost every rule Greg had rattled off earlier. The guy wasn't lazy, he worked fast, but he cut every corner to do it. At one point, Daryl climbed halfway onto a shelf to yank down a box. Eli froze. "Dude, relax," Daryl said, hopping down with a thud. "Been doing this 20 years. You'll learn." By 2 a.m., Eli's back ached. He wasn't used to this anymore. His hands were raw from the tape gun. He sat on an overturned bucket near the loading dock, trying to stretch his shoulders. Mason came by, wiping sweat from his forehead. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah. Just catching my breath." Mason sat next to him. "Daryl's a machine, huh? He's fast, but doesn't seem safe." Mason lowered his voice. "He's been here forever. Knows the system. But the last new guy who called him out. Greg cut his hours the next week. Said he wasn't fitting in? Eli looked at him. Seriously? Mason nodded. We're short-staffed 5 nights a week. Burnout's bad. And the guys who try to follow the rules? They get left behind. Eli didn't speak. His jaw clenched. He finished his shift quietly, watching, listening, taking mental notes. When the sun started rising, he clocked out and walked to his car. His shoulders throbbed. Blisters had formed on his palms. But what stuck with him the most wasn't the pain. It was seeing a seasoned worker climb a shelf like it was nothing and knowing the manager didn't care. He sat in his car for a long time, staring at the building he'd built from nothing. Then he said quietly, "This place used to be better than this." Eli returned the following night without hesitation. His muscles were still tight from the shift before, but he didn't care. The first night had opened a crack, and he wasn't done looking through it. He parked in the same spot in the gravel lot just after 10:30. A different woman was at the front desk tonight, older, glasses perched low on her nose, tapping away on a tablet. "You're Eric, right?" she asked without looking up. "Orientation's done. Go ahead back." He nodded and walked the now familiar hallway, gray walls, faded floor tiles, buzzing fluorescent lights. The break room had fewer people this time. Mason wasn't there yet. Darryl was, sitting alone, eating a banana and watching something on his phone with his earbuds in. Greg entered at exactly 11, holding a clipboard again. His voice was clipped. "We're short again. Surprise. Eric, you're with Mason tonight. Zone A, sort and stack." Eli didn't respond, just gave a quick nod. He knew better than to draw attention now. Mason appeared seconds later, rubbing his eyes. He looked more drained than the night before. "Let's get started," he said, motioning with his chin. They walked in silence past conveyor belts and idle forklifts. Mason's boots dragged slightly. Zone A was colder than the other side of the warehouse. The air vents overhead rattled faintly. A few carts stood half full near the sorting tables. Eli followed Mason's lead, scanning barcodes, loading bins, taping boxes shut. After about 20 minutes, Mason stopped to stretch his back, exhaling sharply. "You always work this shift?" Eli asked. "Last 4 months," Mason replied, not looking up. "I was on days before that. Asked to switch so I could take care of my mom." Eli paused. "She okay?" "She's recovering from surgery. Doesn't sleep much. This shift lets me be home during the day." They kept working. Neither of them spoke again for nearly 15 minutes. Then Mason said, "You said it was your first warehouse job?" "Yeah. You're picking it up fast. Got the rhythm down already?" Eli gave a small shrug. "Trying to keep up." "Don't try to keep up with Darryl," Mason said, picking up a box with a label reading, "Fragile. He's fast, but he's reckless. A couple months ago, he knocked over a rack near the outbound dock. We had to shut down half the zone for 2 hours." "What happened?" Greg blamed a trainee. Said he wasn't alert. But everyone knew it was Darryl. Eli raised an eyebrow. "Nobody said anything?" Mason looked at him, eyes tired. "You think people here feel safe speaking up?" They kept stacking in silence for a while. Eli watched Mason adjust the wrist brace on his left hand. It was frayed at the edges, the Velcro barely holding. "You heard it here?" "Yeah. Pushing a pallet jack that had a bad wheel. Slipped on a slick patch by the loading dock. And reported it. Got told I should have checked the floor first." Eli said nothing. By 1 in the morning, a pallet had tipped over in Zone C. A loud crash echoed across the warehouse. Someone swore. Greg's heavy footsteps followed immediately after, along with the unmistakable sound of a clipboard being slammed against metal. Eli didn't move. Neither did Mason. "Zone C's always chaos," Mason muttered. "That's Darryl's area." It took 20 minutes before anyone came by. A short woman in her 40s wearing a headset stopped near their station. She glanced at the half-stacked bins. "You two aren't done yet?" she asked with irritation. We're on pace, Mason said without looking up. Doesn't look like it. Eli watched her. Her badge read, Tony's supervisor. She was new. He hadn't seen her the night before. We're sorting by updated zip codes, Eli said. There was a routing change. Tony narrowed her eyes at him. Are you correcting me? No, Eli replied. Just explaining the delay. She stared for a few seconds, then walked off without another word. Mason leaned closer. Don't talk back to her. I wasn't. You were to her. What happens if you do? Hours get cut. Or you get moved to freezer intake. No one lasts long in there. By 2:30 the pace had picked up. A shipment from Cincinnati arrived late. The crew was already behind. Greg yelled across the floor for people to double up on carts. The noise level rose. Forklifts weaved between aisles with barely a foot of clearance. Eli was pushing a cart down a narrow lane when someone nearly clipped his elbow. He pulled back just in time. The driver, mid-30s, beard, tight grip on the wheel, didn't stop. He just kept going. Hey! Eli called out. The forklift didn't slow down. Mason caught up a moment later. That's Jay. Don't bother. What do you mean? He drives like that every night. They need him certified on third shift. He knows it. That's not safe. Mason looked at him. You starting to see a pattern? At 3:15, Eli went to grab another stack of shipping labels from the front counter. As he passed by Zone C, he noticed something that made him stop walking. Darryl was leaning against a steel beam, arms crossed, watching two younger guys unload a pallet. He wasn't helping. One of the younger workers, short, maybe 19, was struggling to move a crate with a broken dolly. You've got to push from the edge, not the middle. Darryl barked. The kid kept trying. The crate tilted. A corner scraped the floor. Darryl didn't move to help. He just kept yelling instructions. Don't you drop that! You drop that and you're buying it! Eli stepped forward. Need an extra set of hands? He asked the kid. The young worker looked up, surprised. Yeah, please. Eli grabbed the rear end of the crate and helped guide it onto the pallet. They pushed it together until it locked in place. When it was done, Darryl shook his head and walked off, muttering something under his breath. Eli turned to the kid. You okay? Yeah. Thanks. Darryl says I've got soft hands. Whatever that means. Eli didn't reply. He just watched Darryl disappear down the next aisle. At the end of the shift, Eli stayed behind in the break room, pretending to stretch. Greg came in, pouring himself coffee from the machine. Hey, Eli said. Quick question. Greg looked over. Darryl, does he always train the new guys that way? Greg sipped his coffee. He knows what he's doing. But he doesn't seem to follow any of the protocols. Look, Greg said. Darryl's been here longer than I have. He pulls weight. He gets shipments out. That's what matters. What about the younger guys struggling to keep up? Greg shrugged. This isn't a daycare. Sink or swim. Eli nodded slowly. Appreciate the honesty. Greg didn't answer. He left the room without looking back. Eli sat for a long time after that. The lights in the break room flickered. The vending machine hummed. He didn't feel angry. Not yet. But he understood something now. The problem wasn't laziness. It wasn't incompetence. It was indifference from the top of the night staff down to the busiest aisle. It was a system that rewarded the loudest voices, not the right ones. He stood up, rubbed his eyes, and headed to his car. Tomorrow, he'd be back. But not to sort packages. Eli didn't clock in on the third night. At 10:15 p.m., he stood in the cold shadow of a parked semi-trailer just outside the warehouse's rear entrance, watching the loading dock from a distance. His hoodie was gone, replaced by a tailored black jacket and clean slacks. The disguise was over. He had seen enough. He waited until the shift had started fully, carts rolling, forklifts buzzing, and the old rhythm of the night shift falling into place. Then he walked into the building through the employee entrance, past the front desk where the night receptionist sat reading a paperback novel. She looked up, startled. "Can I help you?" Eli nodded once. "Call Greg to the break room. Now." The woman's eyes widened. She picked up the landline without asking questions. Eli walked the hallway alone, boots echoing against the linoleum. When he reached the break room, 2 workers were inside heating up instant noodles. They froze when they saw him. "You too," Eli said, voice calm. "Take your meals out to the loading dock. Please." They left without saying a word. Greg entered 2 minutes later, clipboard in hand as always. He stopped short when he saw Eli standing by the vending machine. "You're not supposed to be," he began. "I am," Eli interrupted. "And you're going to want to put that clipboard down." Greg's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. "Who are you?" "I'm the man whose name is on every one of your paychecks." Greg stared at him. "I'm Eli Emerson," he said. "Founder. CEO. I've been working your night shift for the past 2 nights under the name Eric." Greg's face turned pale. He lowered the clipboard slowly. Eli didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "I came here because I got a tip that something was wrong. I didn't trust second-hand reports, so I put on steel-toed boots and found out for myself." Greg opened his mouth, but Eli raised a hand. "You knew Darryl was ignoring safety protocols," Eli said. "You knew about the forklift driver cutting corners. You knew about workers getting hurt and being blamed anyway. And you did nothing." Greg's jaw tightened. "This is a hard shift to keep staffed. We get results. At what cost?" Eli asked. "You've built a culture where silence is survival. Where experience is used as a shield against accountability. Where a guy like Darryl can humiliate a trainee in front of you, and you just look the other way because he moves boxes fast." Greg tried again. "It's not that simple. We're understaffed. We're behind constantly. If I start writing people up for every shortcut, we won't get anything out the door." Eli stepped forward. "It's not your job to protect output at the expense of safety. Your job is to protect people. You failed, Greg." Greg's shoulders slumped, but he didn't speak. Eli continued. "You're relieved of duty. Effective immediately." Greg blinked. "You're firing me?" "You're being terminated. I'll have someone from HR call you tomorrow to discuss your severance and transition paperwork. Leave your badge at the front desk." Greg stood there, stunned. Eli didn't flinch. "Now." Greg turned and walked out of the break room, slower than Eli had ever seen him move. Eli waited until he heard the front door close before stepping back into the hallway. The tension in his chest didn't ease. There was too much still broken, too many people still left under the weight of a system he had let rot from a distance. He headed straight for Zone A. Mason was working alone, sweat already darkening the back of his collar. He hadn't noticed anything yet. Eli stepped up beside him. Mason looked over, then stopped cold. "I thought," he began. "I know," Eli said. "I should have told you sooner." Mason's face was a mixture of confusion, embarrassment, and guarded anger. "You lied to all of us." "I did. And I'm sorry. But I needed the truth, not a polished walk-through. You gave me that." Mason took a breath. "So now what?" "You're getting a new supervisor. Someone from our central safety team is coming in to audit the entire night operation. And starting next week, we're adding 2 more full-time workers to this shift." Mason looked stunned. "We've been asking for more people for 6 months." "I know. Nobody listened." "I will now." He hesitated, then added, "You've been holding this place together with worn shoes and a bad wrist brace. That ends tonight. You're being moved to a lead role. Higher pay. Better hours. Full benefits." Mason blinked. "You're serious?" "I should have done it after the first night." Mason didn't speak right away. Then he nodded slowly, like he didn't fully trust it yet. I'll believe it when I see it. There. Eli turned and walked toward the loading dock. He found Darrell near the outbound racks, leaning against a support beam while two younger workers pulled a pallet into place. Same posture. Same lack of urgency. One of the workers glanced at Darrell, clearly waiting for help that wasn't coming. "Darrell," Eli called. The older man turned, squinting. "Yeah?" Eli stepped closer. "You know who I am?" Darrell looked him up and down, then shrugged. "Not really. I'm Eli Emerson." Darrell's expression didn't change. "I've been working here the last 2 nights." Still nothing. "I saw you ignore safety rules. I saw you climb racks. I saw you humiliate a trainee while refusing to help him. And I saw you stand around while others did your job." Darrell crossed his arms. "You have no idea what this place is like. You show up for 2 nights and think you know everything?" "I know enough," Eli said. "I know you're a liability. You're done here." Darrell's jaw tightened. "You're firing me? You've created a culture of fear. You've endangered other workers. You've been warned before, and you haven't changed." One of the younger workers nearby had stopped moving. The other was pretending to adjust a box, clearly listening. "It's not personal," Eli added. "But it's not negotiable either." Darrell's eyes narrowed. "You'll regret this. Nobody works harder than I do. Working hard doesn't excuse putting others at risk," Eli said. "Leave your badge with the front desk. You're off the floor, effective now." Darrell hesitated for a second. Then he walked off without another word. Eli turned to the 2 younger workers still nearby. "If either of you ever feels unsafe, disrespected, or unsupported, you come directly to me. Understood?" They nodded. Eli walked to the center of the warehouse. He found a rolling cart, stepped up on it, and raised his voice. "Can I get everyone's attention for a moment?" The clatter of tape guns and hum of machinery slowed. Heads turned. A few people stopped completely. There were maybe 20 workers on the floor, some standing near pallets, others halfway through loading. "My name is Eli Emerson. I founded this company 15 years ago delivering boxes out of the back of a van. I've failed you." The room was still. "I thought reports and numbers told the full story. I thought metrics could replace presence. I was wrong." He looked around. "I've seen what you deal with. I've seen how hard you work. And I've seen how leadership here has failed to match that effort with respect and support." He paused. "That changes now. We're reviewing every safety policy and enforcing every standard. No exceptions. We're hiring more hands. We're opening a direct line to corporate for night shift reporting. And we're promoting from within, starting immediately." He stepped down from the cart. "I won't fix everything overnight. But I'll be here. Watching. Listening. And acting." Silence held for a beat longer, then the shift returned to motion. But the energy had changed. People stood straighter. Movements were sharper, more deliberate. The quiet tension had cracked. Eli walked toward the entrance, stopping just once at a small table near Zone B, where a stack of outdated safety manuals sat under a cracked plastic cover. He picked one up. Then he turned to the supervisor from corporate who had just walked in, clipboard in hand. "Start with this," Eli said. "It's 15 years out of date." The supervisor nodded. Eli looked back at the warehouse one last time before stepping through the main doors into the night. He wasn't disconnected anymore. And the workers inside finally had a voice that would be heard. 3 weeks later, the Dayton warehouse didn't look different on the outside. The walls were still beige concrete, the parking lot still cracked in places, and the overhead dock lights still buzzed faintly in the cold. But inside, things had begun to shift, and not just in the way boxes moved. Eli returned just after 9 on a Thursday night, no disguise, no press, no staff flanking him. His visit wasn't about ceremony. It was about accountability. He walked straight through the employee entrance and past the front desk. The receptionist, a new hire named Kelly, greeted him by name without hesitation. She didn't freeze, didn't fumble. She'd been briefed, everyone had. Inside the break room, 7 night shift workers were gathered at a folding table reviewing laminated safety cards. A woman in a navy polo with training lead stitched in white over the chest stood at the front, pointing to a diagram of proper lifting posture. Eli leaned quietly against the doorframe, waiting. When she finished, she looked up. "We'll continue with hazard zones next. 5-minute water break, then we're back." As the group dispersed, she spotted him. "Mr. Emerson," she said, walking over. "Didn't expect you tonight." "I didn't announce it," Eli replied. "You're Amanda, right? Corporate safety? Transferred last week. I've got 4 more nights here, then I rotate to Kansas City. How's the crew responding?" "They're still adjusting. Some are skeptical. Some are relieved. But they're listening. That's the first step." Eli nodded once. "Appreciate your work." He moved through the warehouse without a clipboard or entourage. No one stopped him. He wasn't here to interrupt, just observe. Near Zone A, Mason was scanning parcels at the intake belt, now wearing a clean navy vest, the word "lead" printed discreetly on the back. His posture was upright, movements efficient but careful. He was paired with a new trainee named Luis, who was still getting the hang of the process. Eli waited until Mason had a moment between bins before approaching. "Can I borrow you for a minute?" Mason stepped aside, pulling off his gloves. "You're back. Just checking in. How's the new role?" "Still learning parts of it. But it's good. I don't dread walking in anymore." "Anyone giving you resistance?" "Not directly. Some of the older guys are cautious. But they follow my lead if I make it clear." Eli scanned the floor. "How's Luis?" "Fast learner. Nervous, but he double-checks everything. That's more valuable than speed right now." "Good. You need more hands?" Mason hesitated. "We've got enough for now. But if the weekend volume spikes again, we'll be strained. I'll make sure we have 2 floaters on standby next week. You'll have control over when to call them in." Mason gave a slow nod. "That helps." Eli turned to leave, then paused. "One other thing. You've got discretion to write people up if they ignore safety rules, no need to wait for a supervisor's sign-off. I'll use it if I need to." "I know you will." He continued through the warehouse, stopping briefly near the outbound dock. Jay, the forklift driver Eli remembered too vividly, was now operating with a spotter company policy that had been ignored before. He slowed at every turn and signaled before reversing. There wasn't a trace of the recklessness Eli had witnessed weeks ago. Standing nearby was Tony, still in her headset, arms crossed as she watched the floor. She noticed Eli and walked over. "I heard you were in the building," she said. "Just observing. You've stayed on." "I was offered a transfer. I asked to stay." "Why?" She took a second before answering. "I think I owed it. I let things slide before. I didn't ask questions when I should have. I didn't want to walk away without fixing what I helped enable." Eli studied her face. There was no defensiveness there, no performance. "You've got a window. Use it well." "I will." He moved on to Zone C. The energy here was quieter now, more focused. The crates were stacked evenly. No one climbed shelves. No one barked orders. The 19-year-old trainee who had struggled with Daryl's shouting was now working comfortably with another team member, loading a pallet with measured precision. His badge read, Marcus. Eli approached him. "You doing all right here?" Eli asked. Marcus straightened. "Yeah. Better than before. You've got a good pace. Stick with it." "Thanks. It helps having teammates who don't just watch." Eli nodded. "That's the goal." From there, he returned to the break room where Amanda was reviewing incident logs. She looked up as he entered. "No new injuries in over 2 weeks," she said. "And we've had full incident reporting from every zone. First time I've seen that in a long while." Keep tracking everything. If even one number drops, I want to know why. Understood. He sat down across from her. I've been thinking about this place a lot, he said. How it got here. She didn't interrupt. I built this company on hustle. Nights, weekends, whatever it took. And at some point, I started thinking that kind of grind was the standard, that anyone not moving at top speed wasn't trying hard enough. Amanda waited. So I let that thinking scale. I let it harden. And it turned into something else, something that made this place tolerable for the loudest, and hostile for the rest. You've done more than most would to turn it around, she said. Not enough. But I'm not done. He stood. Let me know when your next team rotation's scheduled. I want them briefed on the changes before they arrive. I'll send a schedule tomorrow. As he walked out toward the front lobby, he passed the wall where a new poster had been mounted. It wasn't flashy, just a clean printout in a simple frame. It read, "Safety is not a suggestion. Respect is not optional. Speak up, we'll listen." Below it, a list of direct contact emails, including his own. He stepped outside into the night air, the hum of the warehouse fading behind him. This wasn't about image anymore. It wasn't about metrics or reports. It was about people. And this time, he wasn't going to forget that.